B2B Cambodia, the portal for business use in Cambodia.
Let's talk a little bit about companies overseas that own U.S. investments, whether that's shareholding in a U.S. company, shareholding in U.S. stocks, property, which may be rented. What types of forms are required for those companies that are foreign companies owning U.S. assets?
If you generally have, say, you have a client of, say, IBM or Apple as a client, and you're just selling intellectual property to them, but they're paying you, they'll just require a form what's called a W-8 BEN to this. And what that really does is it tells them that you are not subject to taxation because all of the work and everything is being done here in Cambodia to this. Very simple. There's no what's called physical presence, okay? Now, you have two different types of investments that can vary as well. You, as a company, you have a subsidiary company, you have operations in the United States. That begins to get very, very complex. Generally, you'll need some type of corporate structure, an LLC, a regular C corporation, all of these kind of things. If you're going to put people in the United States, you need to do some very heavy tax planning because the biggest thing you now have to do is called a 5472, which is a U.S. foreign-controlled company, which means, in backwards language, it's a company that's owned by foreigners, majority owned by foreigners, that's a U.S.-based company, okay? Failure to file that form is a $10,000 penalty. You can go in and ask forgiveness with the IRS, and occasionally they will grant it. We actually do that as well to this, but that's an issue. So when you are doing business in the United States, the best description is it is very complex. You need to talk to a very high qualified tax professional on this. Not to mention the single biggest mistake that foreign companies will make in the US is failure to deal with payroll taxes properly if their employees are in the US. The IRS will shut you down faster for not paying payroll taxes than they will anything else. The US tax code is 80,000 pages. The vast majority of that have to deal with company regulation on taxes to this. The taxation on income that's US sourced, very important on this, is effectively a 30% flat rate in the United States for a non-US owner. So what happens a lot of times is that you've got an investment over there. The investment shareholding will report it out as a dividend. It'll issue a 1042-S with a 30% tax withholding. Realistically, if it's a certain, there's no real threshold to this, but if it's a minimal amount of money up to, and I'm talking tens of thousands of dollars in this case, the money has already been withheld to the IRS. There's no tax benefits for filing a tax return. It's a moot point. You can change your investments in the type that give you cash positive, but are tax flow negative in the United States. An example of this is rental real estate. And rental real estate is a fabulous way to build wealth in the United States. So any type of entity, if either an individual or a Cambodian company, could buy United States real estate and check the box that says that they want to do net tax on the income to this. That allows you to use the depreciation because the house itself or the commercial building would be depreciable over 27 and a half years, which means each year for 27 years, you get 1/27th of the building value as an expense. What generally that means is that you are getting the deduction, and so it's writing off the value of the property against the income, which means that most cases, unless you've owned the property for a very long time, you will be cash flow positive, you'll be getting a monthly check, but you'll have no tax consequences in that current year to it.
For those foreigners that are buying shares in the United States and may have a Charles Schwab or a TD Ameritrade account and are luckily fortunate enough to have capital gains or dividends or even interest if they have bonds, let's say, do those persons have to pay tax in the United States or file any forms in the United States?
Interest in many cases, especially bank interest in the United States, is not taxable to foreign residents. So if you can go get a higher interest rate in the United States than US dollars, you're generally not attributed to taxation on that. Okay. Dividends, again, if the income is coming from U.S. sourced, yes, there'd be a 30% tax withholding on the dividends with this. However, capital gains as a foreign national are free of U.S. capital gains tax to this. So as a tax planner, you would generally say, don't go for a dividend yielding stock, go for something that is appreciating in capital in the area to this. And the good news about this is most of the larger tech companies aren't paying any dividends because they're constantly trying to grow their market share. Those are the companies you really want to go into. So the more aggressive U.S. companies that don't pay a dividend, but yet are increasing at 15 to 20% a year in stock prices, if you can find those, not always easy, those are the kind of stocks you want to go with.
Okay. How easy is it for a foreign company to establish a subsidiary in the U.S.?
The United States has 50 separate states. Each state is its own tax regime as well as the federal tax regime. So you have the U.S. IRS that you'd file taxes to, and then you have the states. Now, a lot of companies you'll hear the word Delaware a lot. They'll incorporate Delaware because Delaware has effectively minimal taxation and minimal corporate stuff for companies who are doing business outside of Delaware with this. In fact, a lot of Asian businesses think that go to California and set up and run business immediately in California. They find out shockingly fast that is a very, very difficult to do business in. In fact, several years ago, they did a survey of American 500 Fortune company CEOs. They rated California dead last for doing business. But the perception from an Asian standpoint is that's the gateway into the United States. But oddly, the better gateway is Tennessee, where you have a distribution system around 2/3 of the U.S. population very fast. You can go in and set up a distribution system in the Caribbean that ships into the United States fairly quickly, and you have no physical presence in the United States. And this is one of the big advantages of a company like Amazon. You can ship over as small as a 20-foot container to them, or you can drop ship from Cambodia if you want to, and sell in their online platform. Now, because Amazon is controlling the warehousing, they're controlling the distribution, and they're dealing with all their own sales tax, you have no permanent establishment in the United States and no U.S. tax issues by using their platform.
Okay, and your company does company setups and incorporations? We
don't do the incorporation, but we do the planning that shows you how to set up to this, all the way to the individuals who can help you incorporate in each individual state. But we're kind of the first stop to say, I want to do this, how do we do this? Or we've moved beyond the stage of Amazon, we want to set up our own warehouse, our own chemical plant. With this, how do we begin to move the money around?
Okay. Well, Thomas, thank you very much. This was intriguingly technical, which as you said, there's 80,000 pages in the U.S. tax code. So I can imagine why it's very technical. And I learned a lot today as a U.S. expat living overseas. Thanks again.
Thank you.
This has been B2B Cambodia.